Okay, hi everyone. We are doing a Wolfram language design review, and this is about a new feature that we've been discussing for a long time that we call percent modernization. That has to do with the thing we denote by percent, which is the previous line, but we want to do that in a more robust and permanent way. All right, so let's dive in.
Okay, so now you have seen, Stephen, some of this presentation before, but for the sake of the live stream, I'll just very quickly go over kind of like the
Well,
sort of
it's
the
also for
basics
my
of it.
sake because I'd like to be reminded.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
And actually, yeah, two general notes for this review. So the thing that we want to focus on for now, there are several aspects of this that kind of yet to be resolved, but we want to kind of resolve at the moment the evaluation behaviors and the display states of these smart percent. So that's kind of the focus of this presentation, at least.
Okay.
So there are other aspects such as insertion that have not been, fully developed.
What do you mean
Uh,
by insertion? What do you mean by insertion?
oh, how you actually get a smart percent.
Ah, okay.
I think there are kind of more fundamental issues that need to be nailed down first.
Okay.
Um, and that, yeah, that's what it's about. So yeah, the premise is, as Tim kind of just said, a smart percent. It basically evaluates to an output value corresponding to a specific input-output cell pair, rather than the percent we have now, which evaluates to kind of like a fixed or relative down value of out, so something from the kernel. And so in this sense, yeah, smart percent is it's a spatial link to an actual location, an actual cell in the notebook, rather than just essentially like a line number in the
Let me
kernel.
ask this question. If you're in a command line interface, this is all off the table. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it doesn't make any sense fundamentally, because
No, I
what
agree.
we're talking about is positional references in a document. Command line interface, you don't have a document.
Yeah.
Right. So this is essentially a notebook connected percent as opposed to a kernel connected percent.
In some respects, yes.
Yeah, that's the details of which we're going to be discussing a bit. In some regard, yes, but that's not the whole story.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the complications of this come in. So just very basically, okay, so let me just reset dollar line. Okay, so evaluate an input cell that creates an output cell, right? And now, so I have this set up so that when I type a percent and then type something afterwards, it's going to insert a smart percent. I don't think that's right. I've just set it to that so it's convenient for this presentation. As I say, insertion is something we need to look at in more detail later. But yeah, so I can so I type the percent and then that was transformed into this smart percent, which is linking to this output cell. So if I evaluate this,
I just want to say that I've said many times that I think the right way to do the input. I'm going to make a suggestion. Okay.
Mhm.
First, if you type percent, there should be a raft pull down type thing that appears.
Yeah.
First point. Second point, perhaps we should decide that control 5, control percent, we should just take it over to be some kind of different spatial percent.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be totally happy about that.
Well, we
think
have
it's
to
a
talk about it.
Yeah.
Maybe control shift percent.
I think it'll be a low value shortcut, and the people who know it for what it is
Fine.
today, it'll
Fine.
just
Well,
be
maybe
totally
control
lost.
shift percent would be a possibility. Okay. In any case, all right. Let's keep going. All right. So anyway, so
Yeah.
you've got one of these smart percents.
Yes. And so the idea, okay, so that kind of evaluated as you'd expect. Now, if I don't know, do that, right? So I change this, and this has changed. So that was out 1, right? It's now become out 3. You can see that this has automatically updated. So it's no longer referencing.
And it's grayed the output to show that the output is no longer kind of up to date with the current state of the input as well.
Why did that change to out 3 and that percent? Why didn't that stay what it was, locked for the original value, for the original place that it was picking stuff up from?
This is the original place that it was picking stuff up from, and that's changed.
What do we mean by place? Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. I see. you're saying that notebook position is the same, but now what if I inserted a line in the notebook? This is a cell ID basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
same cell, but now what if I copy that cell? Could you copy that cell?
Sure. It actually links to both.
So this is now a different cell with a different ID.
Okay, so let's say
there
x
is no
plus
link
1 to the
between them.
6th down. Okay, fine. So that's just a different thing.
Yeah.
All right. So that the previous thing is linked to the previous cell, but I think it's confusing to say out 3 there. I see. Did you click it and it flashed?
I did. Yeah. And if the output cell wasn't there, it flashes the input instead. It falls back to flashing that. But sorry, you're about to
I
say...
think that having the out 3 there is super confusing.
Because it's confusing whether it's a kernel link or a cell link.
Yeah. Because it's going to change. I think what we discussed before is that you have an iconized version or an elided version of the actual expression.
Well, and that's there too. But yes, you're essentially saying remove this part.
I'm thinking
right,
yes.
This is plus, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
The out of n is confusing.
But let's suspend judgment on that momentarily until we get further through the presentation. You may not continue to think the same way. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
There are multiple reasons why that's useful, but yeah, we'll see. So
well, maybe it just is visually presented wrong. Maybe that's all I'm complaining about. I mean, we talked about last time, could we put the equals sign in there? Because that would help too. You know, if the out 3 was really tiny and had a little equals sign after it, I think I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, so perhaps diminish its appearance.
I mean, there's a question of how big this blob can be.
Oh, you mean in terms of what goes here?
Yeah, how long can this be? I mean, because a percent sign is a very small object, but I think having this be a pretty juicy thing is not terrible, because I think a given expression is not going to contain that many of these. See what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, when you say juicy, do you mean juicier than iconize, for example?
Maybe. I mean, yes, it has to be, because it's got things in it like that out 3 thing.
Well, yes, fair enough. But I mean, in my thinking, for the moment at least, is that, you know, it's basically size-wise, it's basically a typical iconize plus the size of the out label.
Probably. But I'd like to say that if that's the case, iconize has more information in it that, you know, and I don't know if the thing is off screen, how does the jump back work? Can you jump forwards again after you've jumped back?
As in from the cell that you've jumped to jump back.
Well, yeah, because if it has to scroll to get to
we were discussing this literally just before this meeting, and we have ideas for that, but we haven't. Again, that's one of the things we need to resolve. But we have potentially going having a back button or some attached cell that disappears after a certain amount of time. I think we can come up with something.
Or it could jump back and then jump forwards again and just show you here's where it is, and then.
Well, and one of the things I was advocating for is, I mean, we have, standard, I mean, there are standard gestures and such for back that, among other things, we can provide other interfaces too, but among other things, that should just work.
Which should work?
Like a standard back-related gestures of the sort that you would use in a web browser.
Yeah, I understand. We don't have that typically. I mean, then we should.
Well, we just for technical reasons, we do actually under Windows. We don't under Mac, but I'm gonna push back against that now that it's come up in this context.
Right, but I'd love to have a hyperlink thing that goes as a back button from a hyperlink. That'd be great.
Oh yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, fine.
Because that's what because that's what the click action effectively is. The click action, except for the flashing bit. Otherwise, the click action is just effectively following a hyperlink.
Okay. So look, the plus in the iconize, I think there's a useful plus that can be given in one of these. I mean, think of it like an icodized blob, this percent blob, because I think that many things are useful. Its size, where it is, whether it's in the notebook, whether it's a local object, I mean, for example, you might very well want an option where that thing is there, but you want to store it locally. You see what I'm saying? You want to disconnect it and store it locally.
Yeah, that's actually part of this proposal.
Okay,
or
fine.
I think it's part of what Noah's planning to discuss today. It's certainly something we've talked about.
Are you saying essentially replace with output? So in other words, insert the expression, be it iconized or not, here.
Yes, I'm just saying visually, I think we need something like the plus sign of iconize to indicate that there's something you can do.
Sure. Yeah, plus, oops, of iconize. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I've showed that. Right, and then I guess the other thing to say about this is that at this stage at least, this obviously can enter different states, right, depending on the status of its links to the kernel value and the kind of the spatial links to the cells. So if I were to just delete these two, oh look at that, oh there we go. Yeah, it's changed states to kind of reflect that. And
I'm sorry, what did you just do? You just deleted
I deleted
it.
the linked cells.
Okay, well, I think the out3 should go away then too.
Well, the kernel value's still there. Well, but also you're saying that the out3 shouldn't be there in the first place.
Well, I was saying it should be equals or something.
Oh, yes, that's right. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Let's get into the state. So I guess very quickly I'll mention for appearance that yeah, the idea is that we want to emphasize the spatial nature of the link, which is why there's this kind of out cell bracket type thing here. Whether this appearance is quite right, I'm not sure. And it should also
with that ridiculously hieroglyphified cell bracket, which I've not been a fan of for 30 years. But whatever. Yeah. I mean, yes, I get the point. The fact that it's got that weird hangman thing is just weird. Anyway, never mind.
Back in the day, I actually wrote the documentation in the user's guide that was the the legend for the various cell types.
Right. Right. Well, you and the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think these actually aren't quite working, so I think we'll skip these, but we have thought about multi-input and suppressed output as well, and they do sensible things. But I think the core of what we need to kind of work out is to do with this. So there are 3 links that are stored in these smart percents. There's the link to the kernel, which is just a line number there, and then there's the the UUIDs, the input cell and the output cell, and therefore you can have sort of 8 states of these various different combinations, and I think
of existing and not.
Yes, yeah, sorry. So this is yes. Does the input cell exist? Does the output cell exist? Does the link to the kernel exist?
And just to be clear, link to the kernel generally means, I mean, you could do something like reset $line number and maybe kind of screw things up, but realistically it means, are you in the same kernel session?
Yeah.
Yep.
And of course the kernel is what stores the kind of ideal representation of the output, and so it kind of
just one second. Yeah. You might think a kernel, you could switch notebook's kernel. And how would that relate to this? Because then you could be temporarily, in other words, that kernel specification, sometimes it's the notebook's kernel.
In that case, because the cell's evaluator would no longer match what it was, it would register as a different kernel, and so it would be as if the kernel session is gone.
Okay, but let me point out that's reversible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you can deal with that.
Oh yes.
Yeah. It would just be switching from this state to this state, I guess.
Okay, fine. But you don't have it. It's not a one-way road.
No.
It's not a one-way road until you quit the kernel. Then of course it's a one-way road.
Then it's one way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Noah, what happens if you modify the output, right? If output becomes an input, like you make an edit.
So the The link that well, okay, hang on. Let me get into the evaluation behaviors, because in the version that we think we're most comfortable with, the important link is to the input cell, not the output cell, because it's the input cell that can, repopulate that kernel, that down value of out, right? They can re-establish the kernel state in a new session. And so in that sense, the output cell sort of slightly ironically isn't as important in this. So if I so basically the challenge at this point is, you've got this table of 8 states. You can't present 8 states to the user because that's neither useful nor kind of understandable. So you need some kind of reduction. So what's the right reduction to do? And I think the way to do this is, so the linking is positional, right?
And this is the core question. We have spent a lot of time on this one question alone.
Yeah. Okay. So the linking is positional. I think we need to kind of set that expectation in people's brains that this is linking to a specific cell. And then how do you get the value, right? How does this thing evaluate? And so we think this makes most sense. Positional linking and then only kernel evaluation. So given that we're insisting that kernel value be present for evaluation, as I was just saying, the important spatial link is to the input cell, which is the one that can repopulate the kernel value, not the output cell. So these are the 2 columns that matter now: the kernel link and the link to the input cell. So now, if everything's kind of fine, then we see the state we were seeing, above. If you've deleted the input cell, but the value is still on the kernel, say, then we just put this kind of red, we redden the sort of the cell bit of this, which is kind of the cell bracket. And I think the reason we don't want to go to something a bit more extreme at this point is you could just be cutting and pasting the input cell. So we don't want this to kind of look too angry. It's really kind of like a harbinger for sort of this state.
Wait a second. The input cell goes onto the clipboard, out of the notebook. Yep. I mean, for some reason, I feel like a dotted line is an indication of possible ephemerality, so to speak.
Maybe it should be a dotted red line, perhaps. Yeah, maybe.
Well, even dotted gray, I guess.
Because the fact is that I think, okay, so in this motif, let's see, blue, which is the color of icon eyes.
No, gray is the color. Have I got that wrong? No, yeah. It's
blue is the color. Oh, it's now gray. Okay.
It's always been gray.
Okay. All right. Well, then.
I mean, it might have a hint of blue, but yeah.
No, it's not blue.
But the main point, just to drive home, and Noah will explain this in more detail. The main point, just to drive home, is that if you press Shift Enter on a thing containing, this percent blob, only the first 2 forms will actually evaluate. The last 2 forms will fail to evaluate.
Yeah.
Why does the second to last form not evaluate? Why doesn't it recreate itself from the input cell?
Well, okay, and so that's another question of exactly if and how we want to do that. So I guess right, and that's
it feels a bit like, although I don't particularly like it, the evaluate initialization cells dialogue.
We have a nicer way of dealing it with.
Yes.
And it's literally the next thing.
Right. So if you evaluate thing number 3, I mean, it's not hopeless. It will put you on a path to restoring yourself back to state number 1.
Yeah.
Okay, but you said it's an error. I mean, evaluating case number 3.
In other words, it's not going to auto fix it for you, but it will make it easy for you to fix it.
How?
So that's that's what we're going to cover.
And this, by the way, is why it's sort of the display states are dependent on the evaluation behaviors, right? So yeah, if you've got, it's sort of similar to when you have incomplete input, right? So if you try and evaluate something like this, where the data wasn't stored on the notebook, it fails to evaluate and you get a message. So we're essentially copying that paradigm. Yep. And so if you've got at least one stale, I'm calling this state 3 a stale, stale percent blob reference, whatever. If you've got at least one of these stale states, then we could do the same in an input cell. Then we could do the same, right? So we could prevent evaluation, but throw a message instructing the user to evaluate any linked input cells. But we could also include an option in that message to attempt evaluation by interpreting the output cell, by reading in the boxes of the output cell and essentially just applying to expression on them. This was mocked up very, very quickly today. I'm not. This is the idea of how we might do this. This is not a sort of a concrete proposal, but this would be the idea, right? So you have this state, right, where I've got like a duplicated 2 instances of this percent blob, and I've got another one here, and then I attempt evaluation, and we redden the kernel part. We prevent evaluation, and we throw this sort of elaborate or sort of a rich message, I guess, and it lists out all of the unique, stale references you've got. Says something like, so this does not yet have a value in this session. Evaluate its input cell, and that would be a link.
Or retry using the interpretation of the output.
Yeah, and then
that's not as good of a solution. I mean, it might fail for a number of
the
reasons.
Input cell thing might fail as well, because the fact is it might not be an uncontextualized input cell.
This is true.
But this is
true. But this is why it's a link and not a button to simply reevaluate, because we're forcing you to go take a look at it, and you hopefully will have some understanding of your of the work that you're looking at, and to say, oh, actually I need to evaluate this entire group of cells. I remember that's how it works now.
Right.
And by the way, you were mentioning earlier a way that, if you click on this and you jump to the input cell, well, wouldn't it be nice to get back? I mean, this is clearly kind of like a very compelling case for having such a feature.
What's the right-hand side of that retry using value interpreted from its output? What is it doing?
Say again, the right-hand side of...
Well, that retry using a value, what's happening there?
Oh, I see. So it's if the output cell exists... Well, actually, if the output cell didn't exist, this wouldn't be shown. This
got it.
Half wouldn't be shown. If it exists, it reads in the boxes of that cell and it basically just applies to expression on them and uses them for that evaluation.
And what does it then record? I mean, what does it then show in the percent blob if it did that?
So if you do that, and this was John's suggestion, I quite like it, that these would stay red, right? So if you evaluate the input cells, right, then you're going to jump back to this state. And actually, I think if you do that, we could cross these out. Again, a suggestion from John. As you've done. So say I evaluate,
But has Jason been involved in this discussion?
Oh, yes.
Jason implemented the C++ side of this.
Yes, and he's been deeply involved in the discussion, but Jason happens to be traveling today, and some of this discussion literally happened an hour before this meeting. So unfortunately, fine. Jason missed both that discussion and this meeting. But yes, we've been many hours of discussion on this, including Jason and others too, Lou and Brett as well.
Okay.
So obviously, if you evaluate the input cell, this turns blue. If you click this, right, then I think it's obviously this message would disappear because the cell's being reevaluated. But in order to show that we can't go back to the blue state, obviously, because the kernel value isn't there. And keeping these labels red shows that I think that the evaluation wasn't done in a standard way. Yeah.
And furthermore, if you do shift enter on it again, it's going to recreate this error state again.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm wild about the red iconography there, but I get the point.
Neither am I. So essentially, we've got this now. We've added a fifth state, right? And now you can kind of see why I went for this, because it's sort of we're reddening the bracket if the cell's missing, and we're reddening the value if the.
Sorry, yeah, right. Sander is endorsing our process here by saying, from the first look, this looks very complex. That's what we're trying to resolve. It starts very complex. Hopefully we'll end up with something much simpler. Okay, keep going.
It's really hard to make simple things. Super hard.
I know, yes.
Are those two middle cases really unusual and not recommended? I mean, so I'm thinking of like a calculation that might take hours, right, to get its output. and you just don't want to do it again, right? So this flow works good for quick calculations. What about parallel calculations or things that take hours or days?
Well, if you've got something expensive, then you'll probably want to do this, right? So just reinterpret the output boxes.
That's fine. It's just that's expected workflow as opposed to this looks kind of like a problematic workflow.
So
I see. Is that mainly because of the graphic design of these?
Yeah, it just looks like I've got an error that I probably shouldn't.
Yeah, it's not the right design. It's not the right design.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Okay, but let's go back to the states here. Okay.
Sure. So these.
Make a note of that. Yeah, make a note. Make your note, and then let's go back and look at these states.
Yeah. So I guess this is expected. Yeah, workflow, but looks like an error. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm suggesting. Okay, I've got some suggestions for iconography here.
And by the way, yes, the 4 states are complex, but let's be clear. You're only going to end up in state 2 or 4 if you're mangling the notebook.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, suggestion for iconography. I'm not buying the cell bracket. Okay.
Sure.
I've got a suggestion. My suggestion is a sort of a multi-layer hamburger, like the horizontal thing, with one element highlighted, one element further back. So in other words, a stack, think of it as
I see what you're going for. Yeah.
You draw it. Stack of horizontal lines, and then one horizontal line.
Hang on, do I even have something in might even have kind of what you're
There.
We've done that
Yes. What was that for?
This is a trying to convey chat context, chat history. Send these cells, not this one.
Okay, but so what I'm suggesting is some set of bars like that.
Yeah.
Where most of them are thin, but one of them higher up is thick.
Yeah.
And obviously no weird, whatever it is thing.
Sure. Yeah. That part.
Right. So it's kind of almost like a serrated edge in some sense, but it just has one, well, not serrated, but so then, given that kind of iconography, I can see, when the cell is missing, some kind of reddening, graying, something or other or even a caret to indicate the cell is missing in that stack.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So in case 2, right, what you've got is the kernel is still there, but in case 1, you've got the stack of things, and you've got a nice blue highlighted thing in the serrated, right-hand side, right? In case 2, that thing is missing.
Sure.
And so maybe it's a ... it's a red ... in the place where that previous kind of bluely indicated thing was. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And maybe the color grays down from that blue, grays a bit. But or maybe you put red in the stack to indicate that there was a problem with that previous cell.
Now the next case or something.
Yes, that's a possibility. Yes, that's a good idea. An X there. That's a good idea. An X with maybe both things. You gray it and you put an X through it. Yeah. Okay, so now the next case is well, I think the next case, the stack is just like it was in case 1, but you've lost the color as you've done there from the actual box. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which is what you've got. You've lost the color, but you keep the stack on the right because that input cell is still present. So you keep the fully plumed, blue cell right-hand stack.
Sure. I mean, at this point, we could just do this, I suppose. So for the case where everything is fine, right? You've essentially got this, and then we're saying that one of these is blue.
Yeah. I would put one higher than that. Don't put it at the top. Put one above it, and then
sure.
And then now two below.
Yeah. Let's just make it slightly darker. Okay, right. And then, yeah, another one underneath. The 3 was nice because we've got space to clearly show 3.
I think you should try 4. I don't think it's going to be hopeless to show 4.
Okay, so that's state 1. And then state 2, right. So this, I think, would either have to be gray or red or something. But we'd be putting...
We don't want gray because you've got gray for the... I mean, look, you could have light blue for the other ones and then have gray there.
Well, surely you want to kind of highlight the one that you're actually...
but why don't you take those instead of the grays above? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you have in case one, just turn that into a light blue.
Sure. Okay. Right. Yeah.
Very light blue. Very, very, very light. Very light.
More light?
Yeah, like that. That's fine.
Oops. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And these...
And then that one, those ones stay light blue.
Yeah.
And then that one there, the one that's X'd out, yeah, it's fine. You can X it, you can gray it, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Now let's look at case 3.
Yeah. So you've lost the so here what you're saying is the blue is representing, rather than using the out label, although that is useful for something else as well, but the blue is representing the fact that the kernel is kind of alive and connected. So this would now just be gray.
I guess so.
And then this would be a darker gray, I suppose.
Could be, but I was suggesting that the background... I wasn't actually suggesting that. I was suggesting I wasn't suggesting that actually, but that's a reasonable idea. It's a reasonable idea. That's not a bad idea. And then the cell itself, the background color of the cell of the complete percent blob would also go to gray.
Yeah. That's the same as it is now.
Right, but that I like that idea, that those are no longer kernel activated things.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the final case.
Well, but then there's also this awkward one. Well, and actually, okay, the final case. So we're not going to have the cell bracket anymore.
I'm sorry. Which awkward case?
This sort of 3.5.
Okay, so wait a minute. You've evaluated it, and
yeah, this is...
Sorry, what was that evaluation case? That was the recovery case, right? Where you went from the output.
Well, or just attempted evaluation of a stale thing, right? So you try to evaluate this. It gives you this, where these have gone red, and then those would stay red if you've retried.
What do you mean if you've retried?
So if you get an output that has actually used, has parsed in the boxes and converts it to an expression,
well, it shouldn't have an outline then. I think
it shouldn't.
It should only have an outline if a numbered outline. I mean, it could be a blobbed outline, as in out a blob, because the numbered outline. Am I wrong there?
Well, actually, we're suggesting a sister feature where you can see in this build we've added the line numbers back in for stale cell labels. But given what we're doing here, that might not make sense. But to answer your question, that's why I included them, right? So there's you can tell without having to reevaluate everything which blob match with which cell, because you just match this out label to the out
yes
label.
I get it. Okay, but so the eval case is, again, that's the case where you tried to evaluate it, but it didn't make it.
Yeah, that should really say attempted.
Right.
Attempt.
Right, but it blocked, basically.
Yes, yeah.
And when it blocked, you got a message. This is merely what it returns after the message.
Sorry,
correct? You get a message. In the case where it's going to go to that block state, you always get a message.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let me think for a second here. I don't understand why this isn't the case. I mean, it's like, let's see, you attempted evaluation, but it couldn't make it because it didn't have the kernel state.
Yeah, because evaluation is always in this model, it's always effectively going to be % line number for the magically determined value of the line number.
Yeah. Okay.
I've distinguished it as a different state. We don't necessarily have to do that. It could just stay in the stale state, I suppose. And actually, so what do we have here? Yeah, that would still make sense. Actually, hang on, let me grab these. Okay.
Hold on. Hold on. I simply don't understand why the out is going red there.
So
after attempted evaluation.
Well, it certainly doesn't have to, and that's why I was saying maybe we just keep this state. I think the reason we added this was to show, it's a bit like, if I evaluate f open brackets, right? This goes very angry red, and this thing did prevent evaluation, and I think that was kind of what we were going for. But
then pinken up the background color. Don't use the pink. Don't use the pink on case 2. Use the pink on case basically 3 and 4, which is you're out of luck.
Well,
case 3, you're temporarily out of luck. You can be pink.
Really should look as angry as possible, I think.
Okay, fine. But case 3 can be light pink. A tinge of pink.
I'm wary of making these things look like pink boxes. That's why I didn't.
I see.
Pink background here, but
well then.
But hang on. This, for example, doesn't change its appearance at all when it prevents an evaluation.
Yeah. So maybe this shouldn't either. Just like X doesn't change its appearance when it doesn't evaluate to 7.
Sure. Yeah.
Right, so I think that's a good working hypothesis. Don't change the appearance.
Yeah.
I do think, again, I'm going to say this again, the out needs to be significantly smaller, like a factor of 2 smaller, perhaps. So it's really just an iconographic thing. When you say out, inside the blobs.
Yeah.
You can fix it.
I do this quickly. Style, row. Oh, yeah, I can just add a font size, can't I?
Yeah. Well, why just font size? You just give it the number. Give the number. 8 or something.
8 might be pretty tiny, but
I know. Put in 8.
Oops.
And leave the label to 10 and put the bracket to 8.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fair. You mean the actual number itself?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Right, let's try this. Oh, those are sorry, I actually need to find a real one. Yeah, there we go.
Ah, lovely.
Yeah,
I mean that out could go even smaller. That out is irrelevant. Even the 3 could go a bit smaller as well.
Now, to be clear, we're looking at this under 125% magnification. Just
Okay,
know
okay,
that.
fine. Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
that is a good point. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's keep it as it is then for now. Yeah. Okay, yeah. These are all screenshots, obviously, so that these won't update. But let me just put a real one in here. 1+1. Actually, okay, let's do something a bit more. There we go.
Yeah, well, the brackets are in the wrong place and things like that. But put a frigging equal sign after it, please, 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 please. Put an equal sign at the end of the close bracket, after the close bracket.
There we go.
Okay, now reevaluate.
There it is. It is
Much
slightly weird
better.
that it sort of looks like an assignment is being done in here. But I suppose that
You've got to have the equal sign there.
yeah, okay, and it does match these. So
I mean, again, I think you can make it smaller and grayer. That
yeah,
label.
I'm just going to put it on 100 so we can actually see.
So
That's pretty small. That is pretty small.
I'm worried about grayer because I mean, right now, we do actually have a color key that we're following here, which is what we've done without labels to
All
date.
right, fine. I don't
they're
think this is
blue in
bad.
live sessions, gray in dead sessions.
I don't think this is bad, what you have there. I mean, the out, people are going to recognize it's an out. If you really look carefully, you can see it's an out, but you don't need to read the out. That's not the main piece of literature, so to speak.
Sure.
Okay, let's keep going. So now the missing cell case is you just don't have, just can't get there from here.
It's unrepairable. Really,
yeah.
the only thing you can do is to, delete the percent reference and start over again. I mean, there's just nothing else to do.
Well, now what percent does right now in that situation is it just sits there and says out of 75 or something.
Ah, right. And so this goes into what should these could these return anything else? So, for example, missing or maybe a failure object.
I mean, there was serious discussion about having this evaluate, and it would evaluate into something. But I lobbied strongly for. I mean, why are we wasting time evaluating and message spew and finding how?
I agree. It should be like a
output is
syntax
wrong?
error. I suspect it should be like a syntax error, which is what you're suggesting.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay.
Actually, in fact, yeah, these literally do. Right. So if I delete this, if I delete this and quit the kernel, and try and come on, and try and evaluate this, it will just fail. There we go. So
good. I mean, the missing cell being so big is a little bit annoying, but yes, I agree that some red thing like that is the right thing. And what I would do is I would use the case 2 iconography on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Then I would just say missing in the, what I would do is I would say paren missing with lowercase m and so on. And then on the right-hand side, use that iconography.
And then,
I don't even need to use parens. We could italicize it maybe.
Okay, italicize, better.
Yeah, missing and then icon 2.
And, I hadn't thought about this before, but the click behavior should be deselected so that you can just start typing over it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, rather than navigating because it has nothing to navigate to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only way to fix it is to delete it and put in something. So
yep,
let's help people get on their way.
What happens if you save this file? What does it save in there?
It's going to save a template box.
Okay.
And the template box will have references to the expression UUIDs of the cells. And it also has reference to kernel session information. So if you close and reopen a notebook, but you're in the same kernel session, it gets it.
Okay. Okay, let's move on here.
Sorry, can I just very quickly ask, do we want to, so I think where we were on giving the option to evaluate using boxes.
Absolutely.
I think we
want that.
So can I just ask, is there then a slightly separate case that we do want for that, which is different to this one, right? To the stale case?
Yes, it is. We do want something, which is the following. It's a recovery case where really it does not refer to a cell. Here's what I would do with that iconography that we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the stack, just have one thing there without the rest of the stack. See what I'm saying? Because it really doesn't come from a cell. It is context independently recovered.
How though? It came from the cell, right?
I know. So what I'm suggesting is go into Illustrator or something. I've got an idea. Just copy the last one of those. Okay. Now the things, the lighter gray, turn them into dots. Those ones, just turn them into those central dots.
Sure.
And get rid of, okay, like that. Yep. It's a bit of a division sign, but you get the idea. See what I'm saying? So in other words, it is that cell, but it isn't that cell in context because it was recovered context independently.
I'm not sure anyone's actually going to get that. It makes sense, yes, but I don't know. Does anyone else think that's slightly cryptic?
It is to me, just because I don't think in percentage. To me, it's pulling it from the output like it always would, but behind the scenes it did something with the kernel. But to me, it doesn't matter.
Well, and importantly, behind, so it pulled, from the output just this time. If you were to do Shift Enter again, recall you'll end up back in the error state again.
Why?
Well, because when you do retry doesn't rewrite the input cell to different kinds of percent references. It's basically saying, okay, let's just pretend this one time, like it's like a block. Let's pretend for this one time that the percent reference one actually refers to these boxes we're going to pick up from the notebook. But we're not doing anything permanent here.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, so I agree. My iconography is a bit obscure. It's cool but obscure.
Why is it temporary? Again, it's feeling like it's a.
Why didn't you just rewrite the thing? Why didn't you just have a saved expression? Look, this case.
So if you wanted to permanently rewrite the thing, and we haven't gone into kind of the details of this, but you can use the context menu anytime
and replace it with an iconized.
Yeah,
iconized, or indeed the whole expression, or indeed the input.
But only while your kernel's active, not if you come back the next day and you have a net chain or trained neural net in your notebook and you want to pick things back up.
We could have, we haven't done this, but we could communicate this in the context menu. But I'm concerned about if we're going to rewrite the percent blob to mean literally something different. That's is that something where we just want you to click a button and bam, it happens, and is that a step too far?
Sorry, say that again. I mean
because the whole time it was a fixable situation. All you had to do was go back and reevaluate the input cell. That's all you had to do.
I'm just saying there's cases where that takes so long that that's not a workflow you want to do. Yeah,
but I mean, and also, by the way, I don't think this should be a right-click menu. I think this should be because this is such a thing where you're so likely to want to take an action based on these things that I think it should be some kind of raft. Just like it is.
Do you mean a pop-up menu, or do you really mean a raft?
Maybe I mean a pop-up menu. I mean the same kind of menu that we have for persisting data set stuff and so on.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm with you.
I think it's what you intended anyway.
Yeah,
it's what you should intend.
Yeah.
But to Jeremy's point, you could just replace this with an iconize. Okay, let's take a look at the rest of what you got, because I'm going to have to run in a second.
Okay.
I mean, by the way, the worst case scenario, you could try to replace with those boxes and you could still fail because the boxes are incompletes.
Yeah.
Or they don't round trip properly.
Yeah, it could be a shortened version or something of output or not saved.
Yes, it could be exactly.
There is discussion of that somewhere in here. Maybe here. Did I say anything interesting? Oh no. Anyway, okay, sure. John, what would be useful to? I mean, so if we've only got, do we want to talk about kernel representation?
No. Let's not go into that. Right. I mean, Stephen, I don't know. We're at the scheduled time for this meeting. I don't know if we want to open up a new box at this point.
Probably not. But just give me a sense of what else we have to go over.
Sure. So there's the kernel representation. How are these things actually stored in the kernel? What happens when you convert to raw input form? How do you resolve?
Those two questions are highly related.
Yes. Yeah.
Because raw input form has to have a textual form. So what do you do with it?
Yeah. There's this sister feature of displaying line numbers and style numbers. Representing output. Oh, right. This is my kind of slightly revised version of what iconize is doing. And so for various different expressions, I've come up with kind of different ways of representing them.
Well, that's nice. Which we should probably feed into iconize as well. I don't think we've thought through iconize. That I think iconize always was expecting to have more development along these lines.
Okay, well, if we nail them here, there's a good opportunity to put them in. The context menu.
Isn't there a function that iconize is relying upon to do that?
Yes, there is.
I can't remember the name of the function.
Yes, there is.
An exposed system function.
Yes, but it's the name is escaping me. But it's basically something that's like, the function is supposed to give you an idea of of a larger expression.
Well, it's not snippet, but it's something like it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the context menu and there's sort of more going on there. We've got roll up inputs as well, which is quite nice. Right, there's this idea.
What do you mean roll up inputs? You mean you've got the possibility of a series of cells, and you can.
Yeah. So if I say plus B, and then I say plus C, and then I say %. If I say roll up, there you go.
This was obscure in this case because that was the evaluated form. That's
Well, I did that.
That was the same form as the evaluation, right? If those things had been +2, +3, +4, you would have seen that.
Maybe, sorry. Yeah.
Maybe do like random real.
No, it's just 1, 2, 3. Just replace the A with a 1.
Well,
sorry, how is this any different?
What are you doing?
Wait,
no.
No,
you just need to not have it be the case. You need it to have % plus. Okay, you say 1 at the top. 1, A, 1. Then % plus +2, let's say. Okay, then that +4, whatever it is. Now do your roll up.
See? Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, that was brain fart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's nice, really nice, very useful. And it would be even more impressive if those things were function inside type thing.
Right. Yeah.
That's really useful because that really allows one to, you do your initial work using percent, and then you do that roll up, and then you've got a nice clean result. I mean, I've done that a million times. I've got a percent-based notebook sequence, but then I want to turn it into a function. So this will do that. It's wonderful. Okay.
And by the way, this is, the kind of thing that you're talking about is one of the reasons why I think, an idea on the table should be that in certain cases, which we'll discuss later, but in certain cases that, having just typed percent and then doing an evaluation automatically replaces the percents.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, practicality here. I got to go. We got another solid hour, perhaps hour and a half to run on this topic.
Yeah.
So figure out a time when we can, next meet and go over that. I see a comment from our node here. Have to consider a case of an output that can become invalid during a kernel session because, for example, an input stream got closed.
I mean, I don't feel like there's anything special to percent references here. The same thing could be in a variable assignment, or any sort of code construction.
I agree. All right, we need to continue another time. Wonderful. Cool. This is going to be a great feature.
Okay.
Talk to you all soon.
Okay, thanks.